so much for giving me this opportunity to share my slides with you. So my name is Kekeli Dedjoe, and I'm a senior at Long Beach High School. I'm pretty much based in Howard County, Maryland. And I'm really interested in indoor air quality, just public health, and also engineering. And I actually want to major in engineering in college. So yeah, I definitely want to combine my interest with public health and engineering. So today I just want to talk about indoor air quality. So first things first, I do want to ask the question, how much time do you think we spend indoors on average? I think it might seem like we don't spend that much time indoors, but if you think about it, we do, because we wake up in the morning, get ready for work or school, then we go to work or school for hours, come home, and before that, we might be in traffic, and then we come home. And so all of this time adds up to over 90% of our time indoors in general, for Americans. And this includes vehicles, restaurants, if you go to a factory, if you're at home, all this time is indoors and it all accrues. And so it's really important that we are very cognizant of what we're breathing in 90% of the time. And that 10% of the time is also outdoors. And that's also an issue that we have to be aware of. So the title of my presentation is Every Breath You Take, the Importance of Indoor Air Quality, since we need to be aware of the 90% of the time we spend indoors, which can heavily impact our health. So in this presentation, I'm just going to be talking about some background, so what indoor air quality really entails, pollutant type, just a couple, and then also HVAC. And then I'm also going to talk about problems with indoor air quality. So this could be mental illness, this could be physical health risks and disease. And then I'm going to talk about solutions, so how we can evaluate indoor air quality, some research that might be ongoing, and how I deal with it and my own personal stake in this topic. And then this picture on the right just kind of shows the life cycle of air. It just starts with pretty much you need to define your goals. So what are you trying to do with the air? Are you trying to assess it, filter it, get the pollutants out? So you need to make sure you're measuring it. You're controlling the humidity, moisture levels, and this all relates to how HVAC works, which I'll get into more later on. But yeah, that's just a general life cycle of air that circles through. So first things first, indoor air quality is pretty much a term that encompasses prioritizing the health and comfort of human beings in any indoor space. So this kind of involves just the air quality levels, and we're trying to see what levels of pollutants are in the air, how can we lower that, and what measures can we take to improve these levels. So when it comes to the health, comfort, and productivity of occupants, having good levels of indoor air quality are really beneficial because it can help with better breathing. You can't really focus if you can't breathe right, of course. So you need that. You need better indoor air quality levels. We also have to focus on allergens as well. It's allergy season. March is terrible with allergies in the air. So being able to filter out those allergens is really important. And then good indoor levels can also translate to better sleep. For example, sleep apnea. This is a obstructive breathing condition whilst you're sleeping. And people with sleep apnea actually have been shown to be affected by bad indoor air quality, such as particulate matter and just high levels of pollutants in general. So it really is important for your sleep that you're breathing the correct amount of air. And of course, controlling moisture, that relates to humidity and HVAC. And overall, just indoor air quality relates to sustainability and just being able to maximize our productivity in any place we're in. So with this being said, how small would you think that a particle is, just a particulate matter particle? Uh, and if you think about it, it probably is really small. So, uh, and honestly, I like to think of it like glitter, because glitter gets everywhere. I actually recently had like a school show and I had to put glitter on my body, and I'm still finding glitter weeks later. So think of particulate matter kind of like that. It's these little tiny particles that can build up in the body. And so because they're so tiny, they're actually up to 50 times tinier than a strand of hair, which is very microscopic. So the ability for it to be so tiny means that it can be a sneaky little thing that can build up over time and it really impact your health. So the size of particulate matter does vary pretty widely. There's fine particulate matter, which is 2.5 microns in diameter. And then there is coarse particulate matter, which is usually about 10 microns or above. So fine particulate matter usually comes from car exhaust and kitchen fumes or soot, or if you're burning wood, fumes will also be emitted from that. And then for coarse particulate matter, we're usually talking about bigger things like it can be bacteria, it can come from pollen or dust. So think of it like allergens usually are this size. And then in the middle, we just see this visual representation of how the size of particulate matter can vary based on the type of pollutant or substance. So on the right, organic materials, spores, debris, all of this can be pretty big, or they can tend to be smaller, and viruses and vapor fumes can be very small and impact your health a lot. So the main thing to take away from this is the smaller, the deadlier. So on this little visual here, we see that um, as the size of particulate matter gets smaller, it has an even greater ability to enter deeper into your lungs. So for example, a PM10 particle might just stay in your throat, but a PM 2.5 particle can go deep all the way into the alveoli of the lungs and really cause damage over time. So some of the pollutant types that can be particulate matter based are volatile organic compounds, and they're just naturally occurring substances that really don't jive well with our anatomy. So these can come from outdoor pollution activities, like industrial processes, motor vehicles, gasoline, things like that. And then we also have radon, which is a naturally occurring substance that really does not go well for us either. And the limit that the EPA has set is 4 picocuries per liter, but a lot of homes go above this. And they actually say that your risk for lung cancer can be multiplied greatly by being exposed to radon. And it's actually the second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking. And of course, if you smoke and are introduced to radon, your risk is even higher. So definitely something important to think about. And radon usually comes from the soil. It's elemental based, so it's down below. So that's why you might see that your radon levels are higher in the basement versus on the second floor. And then, because we need to make sure that we're keeping safe from radon, VOCs, and just particulate matter in general, we have to talk about HVAC. So HVAC is a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. And this is just a regulatory system of all buildings, and pretty much required in all buildings that we are regulating and circulating the air properly. So this includes, of course, moisture levels, and also ventilation and purification. So the main thing we have to worry about is ventilation. And this helps with air exchange rate. So air exchange rate is basically seeing how much are we changing out the stale air versus the fresh air. And if that stale air is getting more than the fresh air, then it's more likely that we're leaving behind contaminants in the environmental space. So we really have to make sure that we're prioritizing ventilation. And a ton of different scholars have said you need to make sure ventilation is kept up, especially in schools, because of how voluminous the population is. So the demand on HVAC, um, based on different zones, has to be prioritized as well. And then filtering is a little different, but similar concept. You're pretty much taking out those pollutants kind of mechanically. So this can be with temporary measures, or it can be with portable air purifiers. But any of these methods can help support HVAC. And then, of course, temperature, humidity. I believe humidity is supposed to be between 30 to 60% of a building. So in order to do this, we have to make sure air conditioning is working amazing. So of course, fans can also help with this. I have a fan in my room, downstairs, everywhere. This can all help with air conditioning and keeping those moisture levels down, therefore stopping mold growth or anything from being breathed in. And then of course, on the left, we just have kind of the main problems of HVAC. And of course, the top one is ventilation and also contamination inside the building. So this visual comes from one of the sources I looked into actually that I think really encompasses the future of HVAC. So it's more innovative, I would say, and a lot more sustainable. And I think with indoor air quality, it doesn't have to be a topic that might seem daunting or wasteful, but it can actually work alongside sustainability initiatives. So this visual pretty much shows how fresh air and stale air can be mixed together in the midst of like the building, to not only save energy, but also to purify the occupants' air breathing. So on the right, we see the air coming in through those ducts into the heat exchanger, which would exchange the heat with the old air. And then this fresh air would be conditioned into the home. And then the old air from fumes in the shower or from the kitchen can also leave through the opposite end. And then also, I just wanted to mention some information I found from the International Journal of Advancements in Science and Technology. So researchers of the journal, they actually did a literature review, just analyzing how good hybrid systems and just smart technology and HVAC help with just air quality and people satisfaction. And they actually did a case study too, just pretty much testing this out against traditional systems. And they found a significant reduction in CO2 and particulate level matters. I think CO2 was about 40% and particulate matter was around 60% reductions with the smart technology and replacing the old mechanisms of the building that weren't working that well. And occupants' satisfaction in general rose by 90%, which shows that basically filtering out these airs and making sure that older buildings are kept up to date can really help people in the long run stay healthy and satisfied. And so this also relates to disease transmission. So when I think of diseases, first thing I think of is COVID-19, but this can be anything. This can be cold, it can be flu, it can be anything that's communicable. And when it comes to disease transmission, aerosol transmission is also really important. It's not really about the droplets, but more about aerosols, since aerosols can really stay in the air for a very long time and spread a lot further. So this visual kind of shows this. Pretty much airborne spread is a lot more likely when it's aerosol, and it can really spread to a lot more people. And this is important when it comes to school safety. Um, and actually, one study from the Open Forum Infectious Diseases journal, they actually kind of tested this out. And this kind of relates back to HVAC. But what they did was they were like, okay, we want to see how effective air purification is. So they found that in a classroom, I think about 38 students, they found that with the students who had the air purifier, there was about half as many people who were absent versus those without the air purifying measure. So that really shows how important air purification is for disease transmission. And there is also another study in building an environment that kind of supports this as well. Um, they pretty much analyzed an outbreak of SARS-CoV-19 in a restaurant, and they pretty much saw that because of how little ventilation there was in the restaurant, that actually contributed to how many people got sick. So it's really important to stay on top of adhering to these regulations that the EPA or other organizations have set, because it can really help stifle future disease outbreaks or pandemics that we might have. And then something I thought was a little surprising is that indoor air quality actually influences your mental health in a lot of ways. Firstly, especially for the elderly, depression and anxiety are more likely. Uh, in many literature reviews, they've seen that there is a correlation between having more symptoms of depression and anxiety in older folks, so about 69 and above. And then there's also you're also more likely to have sleep disorders like sleep apnea and insomnia because of it. Um, and also younger people, um, just the youth in general can also be impaired. We've seen cognitive impairments in very young infants. There's this one study I think mentioned by the University of Colorado, and they pretty much, in that study, I think it was from like the Environmental Journal, something, something. But I remember reading that pretty much after they paired up about 100 mother and child pairings, they kind of analyzed, okay, so what particulate matter exposure have they had? And does this relate to lower cognitive scores? And they found that it did. And for children or infants who were exposed to more levels of pollution in those second and third trimesters, they actually experienced lower cognitive scores on developmental exams. So this is all really important for the young and old to be very aware of what air they're breathing, and lowering that oxidative stress is really important. So there's also physical risks that come with indoor air quality that are probably pretty easy to mention. So firstly is asthma. I have asthma, so I know firsthand that if the air I'm breathing is not great, my body is going to reject it. And then secondly, lung cancer, like I explained earlier, also has a stake in this, and sleep apnea as well. And then the circulatory system, heart disease and blood pressure are associated with higher pollutant levels, and pulmonary disease. And 4.3 million deaths due to indoor air pollution happen per year. It's a big number, and we can definitely reduce it if we focus on really hammering at this issue. And then for evaluation methods, there's many objective measures that I can't get into today, but I did want to note that there is perceived air quality, which focuses on subjective occupants, how they view their indoor air quality. So this could be like odor sensations or just having being comfortable in the indoor environment. So that kind of requires survey accuracy and making sure we're asking the right questions. And of course, outdoor pollutants also impacts indoor pollution. So we can also keep in mind the air quality index measure, and that can really help monitor indoor air quality as well. All right. And then I just want to talk about a little bit of the guideline leaders that we have for just air quality in general. We don't have a national act or law for indoor air quality, but we do have just general leaders in the space. So we have the World Health Organization, the ASHRAE, which deals with HVAC, and then we also have the EPA, and they're just kind of a national body on environmental acts. And so we've seen that there is kind of a lack of even distribution when it comes to regulations. And this isn't really good because we're not able to pinpoint helping lower socioeconomic communities who need more help when it comes to regulating their indoor air quality. And in general, I know that for sure we can get to that level where we're able to nationally regulate everything. We've also seen success in general with just bans such as smoking bans. Um, about 60% of the population lives in a state where there is a permanent smoking ban indoors. And this has really helped tremendously when it comes to general public health. So just imagine if every single state had a permanent indoor smoking ban. We would see a lot of progress. And that goes for particulate matter or any other type of pollution that we see. And of course, there's a lot more to learn. This is just scratching the surface. This presentation has been pretty US centric, but globally, this is an issue that we need to really focus on. A lot of countries are lagging behind in being able to regulate air pollution. I know, for example, India and China, they have serious pollution levels and they are improving, but we can do a lot better. And also just having access to better HVAC for a lot of countries can be a struggle. So this graph just kind of shows the number of deaths of indoor air pollution from 1990 to 2021. And as you can see, some countries lag behind others. And if we can get to a place where everyone has access to good indoor air quality measures, we'd be in a better place. And there wouldn't be 4.3 million deaths per year. All right. So we've neared the end. General takeaways. This is a highly relevant issue. Whether you're young, old, black, brown, purple, we don't care. You're probably affected by indoor air quality in ways that you might not know. Again, like I said, 90% of your time is spent indoors. So really think about how you can really benefit your physical and mental wellness because overall it impacts your whole well-being financially, socially, globally. We're all at the mercy of this topic. But it can only get better from here. I've seen more efforts in regulations and getting the word out, and it's become a more popular topic over the last 10 years. So I'm really hopeful that we can keep, advocating and really spreading knowledge about this. And like I said before, I have asthma, so I do have to kind of keep an eye on my own lungs as well. As you can see, I'm sniffling because I just had a cold. But I actually wanted to talk about how when I had my cold, I actually had a little bit of a fever, and I think it was due to the indoor air quality actually in my room. Um, when it came to the humidity, my room was actually super hot and moisture filled. Um, and I think that's what contributed to me having a fever. So I had to go downstairs to a different area of the house that was cooler and it worked and I actually healed up a lot better. Still sniffling, but just goes to show that it can help to be aware of the air levels in your room or where you're staying. And I now use a humidifier actually in my room. That's the one I use. I put that in. It's really great, honestly. And then also, my family is really big into just monitoring the air we breathe. And one of those is having a radon monitor. Currently, it says 0.24 in our basement, and that's pretty recent. I just took a picture of it. So, yeah, as long as it's below 4, your risk is probably not too bad. But of course, 0 would be the best level because any amount of radon is risky. So yeah, just in general, I would say prioritize trying to protect yourself, especially because measures to monitor different pollutants can be expensive, but having a humidifier or just a monitor for radon is just one of the simple ways where you can protect yourself and your household. So overall, make sure you keep yourself safe 90% of the time with indoor air quality. Thanks for listening.
Kelly, that was awesome. Great presentation. I'm very impressed with the research that you've done. And this is kind of self-initiated research. And very, very impressive. So I've got a couple of questions. Do you have a few minutes?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So when COVID happened,
Hmm.
you were about 13, I believe.
Yes.
Can you remember back then and tell us maybe how COVID affected you, just kind of as a youngster back then, as an early teen? How did you feel about what was happening?
So it was definitely jarring. I will say that. I think it was jarring for everyone. We weren't really prepared for having a lockdown for that long, and
Hmm.
school was messed up and everything. I do remember just feeling very scared, honestly, for to get COVID because of my
Hmm.
comorbidities. I
Hmm.
was afraid that it would be even worse than the flu. And I think about a year or two after the pandemic, so maybe in 2022. I think that's when I contracted COVID. It was in
Hmm.
June, very weird time, honestly.
Hmm.
And I do remember it lasting a really long time, about
Hmm.
2 weeks for me to get over it.
Hmm.
And I did have, the major symptoms,
Hmm.
hacking, taste, and everything.
Hmm.
Um, but I will say it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. And I
Hmm.
think it's because I made sure I, did the vaccinations.
Hmm.
I messed up.
Hmm.
But if I wasn't very vigilant,
Hmm.
I'm sure it could have actually like turned into long COVID
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
something worse. So
Hmm.
I do remember that time being kind of scary, but I think I look back on it and think, wow, I dodged a bullet because I know some friends who, their family really had to deal with the
Hmm.
effects of COVID. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
what I remember.
Yeah. So you talked about in your presentation, 90% of we spend 90% of our lifetime indoors.
Mhm.
I think according to your graph, 69, 70% of that time is spent, in our homes,
Mhm.
about 14 to 16 hours per day. And my research says that we spend the majority of that time in our bedrooms, and the
Mhm.
air quality can be up to 100 times worse than outdoor air quality. But when we say 90% of your lifetime indoors, that's trains, planes,
Mhm.
hotels, schools, right? Your car, rarely do we get it. There's actually some whale species that spend more time above water than we spend outdoors, believe it or not.
Mhm.
So do you know how to calculate your indoor age?
I mean, I could figure it out, honestly.
So it's your age times zero point 0.9 or zero point 0.9
Yeah.
times your age. So your indoor age is 16.2. That's how many years you've spent indoors.
Yeah.
And mine is 49.5 years indoors. That's crazy. It's totally crazy.
And
So folks, if you want to do the calculation, just multiply your age times zero point 0.9, and that'll tell you how many years you've actually been living indoors. That may make you think a little bit differently about your indoor environment.
yeah.
So, a phenomenon that I've also always heard in my research as well is what's called the asthma tsunami. Have you ever heard that term?
No, I haven't.
So the asthma tsunami happens like the last week of August and up until the last week of September.
Mhm.
And students with asthma, that's the time that they're going to miss. If they're going to miss school, they're going to miss the most amount of school during
Mhm.
that time, just because their bodies are trying to acclimate to a new environment.
Mhm.
Would you say that if you were to miss school because of asthma, that it was, can you remember back, was it during that time or was it a different time of the year? Maybe, and then it's kind of that January time frame where influenza starts to increase. Does that
Mhm.
resonate with you?
Definitely. Yeah, every year I always have to really make sure I'm not going to get sick during the fall, and I usually do.
Mm.
Yeah, September is usually the worst, most definitely. I remember, I think last year I got sick 3 times in
Wow.
September
Wow.
alone. So yeah, it's just the change in the weather, people just, coughing everywhere. And then also just allergy season. So
Hmm.
between February and March can also be
Hmm.
really weird for me sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm.
I know, especially for people with just asthma and allergies, because I have both, um, that season can be terrible. And yeah, I usually get the flu. That's the thing I get the most. Secondly is a cold. So yeah, even if I get a flu vaccination, I'll still get the flu each year,
Hmm.
usually during the fall. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. So what would you say are have you been able to identify what triggers your asthma more? Is it perfumes? Is it dust mites? Is it
Mhm.
your allergies? Is it, particle matter? What have you been able to kind of narrow down the types of things that would cause a trigger?
Yeah, I think cold weather,
Hmm.
for sure, that can be really harsh on my lungs. Even if I'm
Hmm.
trying to run for like
Hmm.
10 minutes in like 40-degree weather, I'm like, oh no, my
Hmm.
asthma is not gonna, they're not gonna take it for real.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think what triggers it the most for me would be dust,
Hmm.
and pollen as well. And I haven't really, and also of course pollutants in the air. I remember there was this one time, I don't remember why this happened. I think it was just wildfires from Canada that came through to
Hmm.
the East
Hmm.
Coast.
Hmm.
And I really remember that day in the morning when I woke up, I was like, something is off. And then I went
Hmm.
outside to go on the bus, and I just couldn't take it. I was
Hmm.
coughing everywhere, and I was like, what in the world? Why is the whole world looking like gray?
Orange.
Why am I dying? And everyone else is just like, so yeah, definitely like immediately I can feel those changes in the air quality.
Hmm.
And that can
Hmm.
definitely trigger my asthma. Yeah.
So, this is very interesting, and I appreciate you answering these kind of personal questions.
Hmm.
And you mentioned, schools and things like that, and air exchange rates, are a healthy space,
Hmm.
according to Dr. Joseph Allen, who's a certified industrial hygienist out of the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard. It's getting, between 4 and 6 air changes per hour, right?
Hmm.
I think the average home probably gets a half a air change or maybe one.
Mm-mm.
And same with schools, maybe one air change, maybe two. But the challenging thing with the schools is it's got more density of just bodies than
Hmm.
any other asset type, that's out there, more than like a commercial office, more
Hmm.
than, a warehouse. Schools just have much higher density. You've got 1,000. How many students do you have at your school? 1,000, 1,500,
Yeah.
something like that. All kind of in a building. Um, and unfortunately, there's no like you mentioned, there's no indoor air quality, no federal indoor air quality mandate, law, statute. There's just guidelines, just as you stated, there's just guidelines. If you had your way and you could regulate indoor air quality or make a law for indoor air quality, what are some of the things that you'd want to make sure we're in that legislation?
It's a good question. I think I would first focus on homes.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think I would make sure that we're making sure that the level of particulate matter is okay in every single home.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think second, I would focus on schools and workplaces. So I think with schools, I would definitely want to invest in building um, better like HVAC systems. Also just bigger schools in general, because some of these schools are too cramped. Like, why
Hmm.
is it looking like a prison? It should not be a prison. And they should be taken care of, okay? Like,
Hmm.
not like prisons that are
Hmm.
dusty and no.
Hmm.
I think we should also focus on just making sure that uh pretty much every district is focusing on the same thing. So
Mm,
not one district worrying about radon more than the other,
mm,
or one district worrying about VOCs more than the other. I think
mm.
it should be streamlined, and there should be like a way to enforce that on a regular basis. So maybe, I don't know, every 3 months, there's somebody or some force that can come in and measure and make sure all the levels of air quality are okay in different areas.
Do you know how often it's done now?
No, I don't.
Every 5 years.
Oh,
Sorry.
maybe 3 months is too optimistic. Maybe we'll do six. I don't know. I don't know. Because that's not good.
That's not enough, right?
No, because things change on a daily basis.
That's right. That's
Daily
right.
basis.
That's right. Well, folks, I'm sure if you're watching this, I'm sure you would agree our future's in very good hands. Have you decided where you're going to be going to college? Are you ready to make a public announcement, or you haven't made that decision quite yet?
I haven't made that decision yet.
Okay.
I'm choosing between, well, maybe three schools.
Okay.
University of Maryland is one of
Okay.
them. University of Michigan accepted me
Okay.
too, so
Okay.
I might go.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. And then University of Delaware,
Okay.
close by. It's kind of like in between the two. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank
Congratulations. So,
you.
and what did you say you wanted to study?
Electrical engineering,
Electrical engineering. Okay.
yeah, or biomedical engineering. But I
Okay.
will be doing research about
Okay.
it more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lastly, I noticed that you have your radon monitor in the picture. I've got mine too.
The same
Your
time.
numbers are actually lower than mine,
Yeah.
and I've had my home mitigated. But it's below zero, which is the important part.
Yeah.
And I just because we're tech geeks, I just got this one in the mail today. Uh,
Wow.
this is a real-time monitor. So the one that you have and the black one, the Corinthian Home, we have to let sit for 30 days because the monitor, the sensors need at least 2 weeks to start to calibrate, right? So you just want to set it in the lowest finish level of your home, let it set for 30 days, and then
Mhm.
it'll give you a measurement. And then I always recommend people get a second opinion.
Yeah.
With this one, and it's kind of thick too, but with this one, you get measurements, you start to get measurements within 10 minutes.
Wow.
And then they say within an hour, it's a fairly accurate measure. Now, would I mitigate based on what this said? No.
Yeah.
Would I get a second opinion? Yes. So for me being a real estate agent, this is something that I can take with me when I'm showing houses,
Yeah.
and we're going to spend at least 10 minutes in the house to be able to get some indication of what's happening in the house, along with some of the other monitors that we have, the mobile ones that we
Mhm.
use to measure particle matter and volatile organic compounds and humidity and temperature and all that jazz. So that'll pretty much cover kind of what's happening in a home when we're there for a brief amount of time. So, hey, this has been great. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want people to know about your research?
Honestly, no. I mean, there's gonna be more for me to find out the next couple weeks. So yeah, I don't know. This has been really great. Um, Very informative for me as well. Uh, and yeah, I think that's
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your thought leadership and your subject matter expertise. This has been great. Keep up the great work. I'm excited to see kind of where this takes you, and excited to see how you advocate for students and young people when it comes to indoor air quality laws and mandates and just kind of changing the status quo. So I'm excited to follow your career in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a great one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
Bye bye.